Um, Welcome if you're new, welcome, if you're returning, welcome if you're visiting. I was, I'm going to steal Graham's line from his share last week. I was driving around my baby for 2 hours today so that he would stay asleep, and I did a really good share in my head for 2 hours. So hopefully I won't go on as long as that tonight. And as usual, I can remember nothing of it now. So it's... I was thinking back to, the welcome I got at my very first meeting, and, how I arrived there as this utterly broken person, this utterly broken girl, and that's how I felt. I just felt like a little girl that was utterly lost and broken. And I remember the warmth and the love that was shown to me, by two women on that and I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten the feeling of just like I'd come home, like I'd finally found where I was meant to be, and it meant so much. I've always, those people, they're not actually still in the rooms anymore themselves. That's the sad thing. They're not. They've kind of drifted off. But I do remember, really clearly how they made me feel. And I was thinking back to, how broken I was at that point when I arrived. Even though, on paper, I wasn't really at the worst I had ever been. That's my truth. I wasn't. I just about had a job still. I just about had a roof over my head. My health wasn't as bad as it had been in the past, but I still just felt like this can't be it. This cannot be it. And like, how on earth can I get through life without drugs and alcohol? And it was at the end of a year of really having tried to control my using and control my drinking. I'd spent a year, at that point I'd spent half of my life drinking and using without any care, and just drinking and using, without any knowledge, without any kind of notion. Well, sometimes a fleeting notion that maybe it wasn't that wise. Maybe there was a kind of connection between, my drug and alcohol use and all the things that were going wrong in my life. But I was never really firmly able to kind of connect the dots, and that last year, I was really trying to control. I wasn't trying to stop, but I was trying to be able to control how I drank and used, because I still thought I could, my drinking and using was pretty boring. To start with, it was great. To start with, it was really, really great. It was really fun. It just took me away from me. I was a gawky, geeky, insecure, unhappy teenager, and I just felt like I had found this miracle answer to all of this neurosis that I had, as a typical teenager, and maybe as a not so typical teenager, I don't know, and I think, very early on, I experienced craving. I think as soon as I had that substance in me, something was triggered that meant I wanted more, and I really believe that. Because looking back, even as a child, when I would sneak booze, as a child, because that's a normal thing to do, isn't it? As a child, going to the drinks cabinet, it's, I remember drinking my mum and dad's alcohol, thinking it tasted absolutely foul, and immediately drinking more. And most children don't do that. Most children who taste something disgusting go, that's disgusting, I don't want any more of that. Like trying to feed my son peas today. He really didn't want any more peas, he didn't have a kind of a craving or an allergic reaction, an abnormal reaction to those peas. They were everywhere, but inside him. And so I think even early on I had that, but when times were good, and when it was still working for me, I had absolutely no intention of stopping. Even when times were bad, I had no intention of stopping. There was no, and I guess I'm thinking maybe when there might have been the power of choice to stop, I just didn't want to. And at some point, my drinking and using career, and I think it progressed, like most people's, does. I started off by inhaling deodorant in my bedroom, and how I even came to that, how I even just, realised that one day that was going to change the way I felt. And I just remember my mum saying to me, God, you're really getting through deodorant, aren't you? Because I was just up there on my own, inhaling it through a pillow, through a cushion, every night. listening to Beatles albums. Like, it was just really bizarre. And I remember letting slip to one of my friends, because I was really secretive as well, and I told one of my friends what I was doing, and she just looked at me like, you're doing what? Like, why are you doing that? You know, it didn't occur to her. She didn't want to change the way that she felt, you know, with a can of Shaw. Like, she didn't, it just didn't, you know, whereas I did. You know, and then I was smoking weed every day, and I was drinking every day. You know, I was drinking, you know, I was drinking with my parents. Not a lot with them, but I was drinking more, you know, on my own. And definitely towards the end of my teens, I was drinking a lot. And I had just really normalised it, like thinking that it was, you know, kind of sophisticated to be drinking wine at 17, you know, my bottle of Blossom Hill, and like, just, you know, I did quite well at school. I was always quite academic, and I did well in the subjects that I found easy, because they didn't require a lot of effort. Anything that you know needed effort, I was always like less enthusiastic about, and you know didn't do as well as you know I could have done if I'd actually applied myself. And there was a kind of like theme, you know, if I always, you know, has potential, could have done better, that kind of thing. Which kind of really crippled me a lot of the times. I just always felt like, am I never good enough now? You know? But I was just a really unhappy teenager. And I went to university, managed to get into a university, and it was just, you know, I was just off and running there. You know, I really took to it, took to the kind of party scenes that they have there, and all the drinking societies and all of that stuff. And I really relate to that in the big book, you know, because that, like in Bill and in Bob's stories, you know, I was that person turning up drunk to my exams. I was that person, you know, off my head, you know, trying to write essays, you know, and believing that it was going to make me even. I thought that I was going to come up with something really profound and groundbreaking, and like it was just like, you know, it was just embarrassing. And God knows, all I can think of is that the people marking them must have also been like fairly, you know, heavy drinkers and users themselves to give me the marks that they did, because it was a load of old crap. But you know, I loved it there because I had no responsibility, had a nice boyfriend who looked after me, and you know, and I didn't have to work, and I just spent all my money on drugs and alcohol. And I remember joking with friends, like saying, "Oh, we're like functioning alcoholics," like that was, you know, something to aspire to, and we kind of thought it was funny. And then I graduated and I left, and it was suddenly like I'm thrown in the real world, and it's like there's these expectations on me. You know, I'm expected to go and get a job now, and I'm expected to, you know, kind of live a life, you know, live a normal life, and like meet someone nice, settle down, and do all these kind of normal things. And you know, I grew up in a family that was really supportive towards those goals, which are nice goals, you know, that, you know, gave me every opportunity, encouraged me, supported me financially, emotionally, all these things. You know, I can never say I was deprived of that, because I was, you know, really, you know, very privileged in that respect. And yet I just couldn't seem to get myself together. I couldn't work out why I couldn't get myself together either. It was just all really, really confusing. And, you know, so my best thinking was, well, you know, I'll get a job. There's a place in a squat that I can move into. So that's, you know, that's what I did. It was like my aspirations were really, really low. Because I just didn't want to kind of move away from this lifestyle that I was in. And I really believed that it was all like, it was stuff I was choosing to do. Whereas when I look back on it, it's like most sane, normal people with a healthy relationship with alcohol or drugs would never say to themselves, you know what, these things are really important to me, more important than my degree, than my career, than my relationship. I'm gonna make sure that my life fits around this, fits around my using, fits around my drinking. And that's exactly what I did. I designed a life to fit around that. And you know, and it just became more chaotic, more seedy. You know, the nice relationships went, the more, you know, destructive ones came in, you know, and it was really damaging. You know, there was a lot of really horrible times. You know, I remember doing just really, you know, I think back at moments and things in my behaviour and stuff I did to people, and, you know, And it just makes me shudder now, the ruthlessness to my character at times, to get what I wanted, the lies I told, it just, I was utterly ruthless. And, and I feel really disgusted by that now, but I can't dwell on the past. I've done what I can to make amends, for all those things. But, it does still, give me shivers. And it was, my life just got really, really small, really depressing and really unhappy. And but I never thought of myself as an addict. I never thought of myself as, really having a problem. Because I just thought, alcoholics are people that sit in parks on benches and drink, just that stereotypical kind of idea. And an addict is like, someone in train spotting, that's an addict, and it is, but I just couldn't see that how I was behaving and how I was using was like that. So when I came into recovery as this really broken person, it was my spirit that was really broken, because it was like all these things I promised myself I'd never do, I had done. It was like I just kept moving the goalposts all the time, and until what was left was just this shell, and I didn't know who I was anymore, and I definitely didn't like who I was. And I just wanted to die. I was 26 years old, and I just thought, that is it, life is over. And I was just a baby. But luckily it wasn't like that. And luckily that was it. That was the last drink I had. I hadn't used drugs for a few days prior to that meeting. I went to a meeting on a Monday night in Poole. I just Googled the first meeting I could find and the closest one to where I was living. And that's where I showed up. And, and I got a sponsor that evening. Because it was quite like fire and brimstone in that room, and they were all shouting, get a big book and get sponsored. It was kind of terrifying, and they were all like buzzing and alive, and it was really quite scary. So I was very grateful to have those nice, soft, gentle women kind of there. And but I could see that there was something going on in that room. I could see that there was something going on in all these people, and I believed them. I say I believed them. I thought they obviously have Christmas off, but they probably have their birthdays off as well, and so I believe them to a degree, but I kind of, it was like I was at such a broken point. It was like, you could have told me to do anything and I would have done, that's where I was at, I just desperately didn't want to die. I desperately didn't want to, I didn't want to kill myself. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to keep hurting people. And I just knew that, all the pain I'd been through before was in the post. That's how I felt, and by going to more meetings and speaking to my sponsor and calling people and doing all these suggestions, I began to learn about this illness. I began to learn about, that I do react bodily different, I do react differently to drugs and alcohol when I have them, that there's this, obsession, this obsession that I think it's going to be different this time. I think I'm going to be able to control it. That's what killed me that last year, was trying to control it and failing. Every single time failing. I could last a few days and then, and then it was just like, something would just switch and I'd be off and running again. And then as soon as I started, why can't I stop? Why am I not drinking like a lady? Why am I not using like a lady? Because I had friends that could. And that was what was, they seemed normal. They are normal, because they're not addicts and they're not alcoholics. They're still normal. Some of them maybe not, but it's, anyway, I have had a really wonderful and varied time, wonderful and, and quite, difficult time in recovery since that first meeting, because I've just had a really ordinary life, I think, actually, a really ordinary life. I've gone through really ordinary, normal things. But for a person who is really, really sensitive and really fearful and really, at times really insecure and at times, dishonest and at times, not very well, those things can be a challenge, I learned about this illness. I learned about, who I was as a person, my character defects, my makeup, and you know, and those are things that I work on, you know, through the steps, through the process of the steps, and through everything that we have here. I work on being a better person, the best version of myself. And, you know, some days I'm okay at that, and other days I'm not. You know, that's my truth. You know, it's mad. If you had told me then that I would be where I am today now, I just wouldn't have believed it, you know. I really wouldn't have believed it. And it's like, you know, I can hands on heart say I am, you know, for the most part, a really happy person. Like, I'm happy, I like myself today. I don't feel this horror and like revulsion when I look in the mirror. I don't feel that, you know. I'm content. Like, and that's okay. That's enough for me today. I'm okay with being content. Like, you know, whereas before it always had to be like thrilling, or, you know, I was always wrapped up in someone else's drama. I mean, you know, confession, I was wrapped up in someone else's drama before I left the house, and like kind of, you know, nearly made myself late for this meeting. So like, you know, I can be guilty of it still. But you know, it's like there's so many gifts that this process has given me. You know, the biggest one, you know, for me has been, you know, probably, well, there's two big ones, like being there with my dad when he died, you know, having had a really good relationship with him, you know, in sobriety, you know, being like a friend with him in those last few, a friend to him rather, those last few months, you know, that was just, I will always be grateful to this programme for that. You know, and the other one is, you know, my beautiful little boy. You know, I have this beautiful little boy at home. And the last time I shared here, I was about 8 months pregnant and like chomping on Rennies. And, you know, it's nice to be here, like not suffering with heartburn. And, you know, and just, you know, I have a lovely, lovely partner who is, you know, very patient and very patient man with me, which is what I need. And and you know, and he's brilliant, and it's just amazing gifts. You know, and in the good times and the bad times, this program has never failed me. It has never ever failed me. This fellowship has never failed me, you know, and there's so much going on here, like, that kind of keeps me invested and keeps me focused. And, you know, this last year has probably been one of the most challenging. It's like, you know, I'm a mum, and I've got all these even more responsibility, and I've got to keep this person alive now, and it's not all about me anymore, because, like, you know, I'm quite selfish. And you know, and it's just, there's been an awful lot of change. I've had to come away from recovery a lot. I've had to find a new way of working this program. I've had to do things online, and, you know, and I felt quite sort of disconnected at times, and, you know, and I really missed you guys. I've really missed being, you know, here in person, but, you know, it's been temporary. And yeah, it's lovely to be back again, and to, you know, I've recently gone through the steps again with my sponsor, and yeah, you know, I've just done my 8, so I can see what a dick I've been to quite a lot of people, and I've got some really cringy amends to make, and but, you know, I'm willing to do it, because I never want to drink and use again. You know, that's all it comes down to. I never want to be, you know, living with a fucking pan of piss under my bed, because I'm too frightened to leave my bedroom. You know, to be hiding, flattening myself in my bed, trying to hide from people that are checking on me to see if I'm still alive, to be scratching around, you know, for money to use. I never want to go back through that. I never want to go through psychosis again. I never want to go through, you know, the degrading, horrible places that I've been to through addiction. Like, I don't want any of that back. So if it means I have to go and put right a few things, then so be it, you know. And yeah, it's yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say, really. You know, if you are new or struggling, or old and struggling, or anything, you know, just get involved, get connected, you know, speak to people, share, do everything that we suggest, and, you know, and go through the steps, and you can have, you know, a really wonderful life. Like, you never have to drink and use again. That was promised to me when I came in, and it's still true. It's still true, and I'll leave it there.
Beautiful.